Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the Thursday race of the day. It is race 8 at Gulfstream Park, a first level allowance slash $75,000 optional claimer for the 3-year-olds, going the demanding distance of 9 furlongs on the dirt. With this being the race of the day, do note you can get free past performances for this race on the race of the day page at DRF.com. Mike, let's throw up this field of 8 runners, and interesting to see if this race is going to have potential Kentucky Derby implications, because I would imagine that this is sort of a Derby trial for a few runners, like maybe the number 5 Grande or the horse down on the rail, Jimmy's Dailies, who could potentially get into one of those 100-point preps in early April. And then you've got a couple horses that are actually cross-entered in a Derby prep on Saturday, the Fountain of Youth, those being Solid Left and McKellen.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting race here because listen, everybody's so lightly raced. For me, it was hard to get a grasp on just how good any of these horses are or how much potential they actually have. But they're very lightly raced. We could certainly get, a major player in a stakes race down the road for sure. To me, the distance was obviously the main question here.
Yeah, and mentioning those cross entries, I did see the race advance from our colleague Dave Grande, who did report that Brian Lynch told him that the number 4 Solid Left is very likely to run here rather than the Fountain of Youth, which is a much tougher spot on Saturday. We'll wait to see where McKellen ends up. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race, Mike. And it's not like there's a ton of speed signed on, but most of these horses are stretching out to the longest distance they've ever attempted. So maybe we'll see a few of them be more forward than they were in their one-turn races. But given the speed that Grande showed breaking from the rail on debut, you would imagine that he's got the early zip to get in front of this field, and we'll see how fast he has to go doing so.
Yeah, I don't have much to add about this pace projector, at least in the early stages, Dave. I felt like the 5 was probably the speed, and we'll see how they sort themselves out behind him after that.
Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1, Jimmy's Dailies, and we'll take a look at his most recent start when he broke his maiden in his 3rd attempt. This was also his 2nd start off a layoff, going the 7 furlong distance. So he's going to be really stretching out here the extra 2 furlongs as he tries 2 turns for the first time. But Mike, you had to like what you saw. Yes, he got a pretty good trip, but he's able to rate in behind horses, comes through between, and he's kicking on well to the wire to hold off some late challenges at the end. The runner-up Pitkin came back to finish 2nd again in his next start, but certainly validated the buyer, getting an 85 in his next race. So it feels like Jimmy's Dailies beat a field of decent quality.
Yeah, I think maybe he did beat a decent field there. He worked pretty hard for it, but if nothing else, he stayed on pretty well going the 7 there. So maybe that'll, give you some hope that he's going to stretch out even further. To me, that was the main question with him. How far does this horse want to go? I thought he ran fine last time. I really thought he had a tough trip 2 starts back. So, I think maybe he was even better than he looked on paper going into that most recent start. He's just the kind of horse, David, who's probably not going to be much of a price in here. And I'm still not sure how good he is and how far he wants to go. So, listen, maybe he won't be the favorite, but even if he's the 2nd choice, I'm not sure if I want him.
Yeah, this horse had tough trips in each of his first 2 starts, so not a big surprise that he was able to improve last time. And we'll see how far the progeny of Vekoma ultimately want to go. He's obviously had a lot of precocity influence among his progeny. I will say Jimmy's Dailies has just a massive stride on him, and often that's indicative of horses that do want to go longer, so we'll see if that plays out to be the case. The number 2 is Sonic Skidaddle, a horse who's coming out of a couple of stakes attempts where he really was not much of a factor in the Kentucky Jockey Club or the Mucho Macho Man last time. And Mike, this horse was visually impressive when he broke his maiden going 7 furlongs at Churchill Downs last fall, but he got a big pace to close into that day around 1 turn, and it remains to be seen if he can have that late kick going 2 turns with a more moderate pace.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously stepping back in class here, you would think would help this horse, but he's still going to need a setup. He still has plenty to prove, in my opinion, and just taking a horse like this over this Gulfstream Park track where it's not always easy to close in a race that they may not be going that fast in up front anyway. I thought this horse was pretty hard to make a case for.
The number 3, Super Times, closed for 2nd in a race at this level last time out, well behind River Thames, who will be coming back as one of the choices in the Fountain of Youth on Saturday. This horse debuted on turf, Mike, and I like that performance quite a bit. He was wide off the far turn and really kicked for home to run that field down, but I'm just not sure if he really took any kind of step forward on the dirt.
I think we looked at it the same way. I really liked his debut, and it makes me think he's a turf horse. He ran fine last time. He was never going to beat the winner, but he also got a perfect trip, and he barely got 2nd.
The number 4, Solid Left, is the other Brian Lynch trainee, and as Grenning reported, likely to start here rather than the Fountain of Youth, which seems like a more appropriate spot for a horse that's just going to have to get faster to prove that he really belongs on the Kentucky Derby trail. I'm not going to hold his debut against him, Mike. That was a pretty tough spot, but he took a big step forward when he stretched out to the 2 turns last time.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the horses who it feels like just because he didn't run a fast race when he broke his maiden that he just might not get that much respect in here. And I thought he ran really, really well in this race when they stretched him out for the first time. You're right to just note that you don't want to hold the debut against him. That was a fast race, and he had no kind of a trip in that race that was going to allow him to be competitive. I thought he really moved forward in here, and I thought he stayed on very well through the stretch to suggest that more distance may not be an issue for him.
Yeah, and Luis Saez feels like a really good fit for a horse that just needs to be ridden every step of the way, and he kept finding more when put to pressure. Didn't feel like he was beating much last time, but at least he did step forward with that stretch out. The number 5 is Grande, who's likely to vie for favoritism in this race. We'll see if he ultimately does go favored for the Todd Pletcher barn, and we'll take a look at the replay of his debut effort where he broke sharply from the inside, contested an honest pace every step of the way, applied pressure to Camp Hale, who is developing a bit of a reputation as a bridesmaid, but is a pretty good horse and one that came back to finish a decent 4th in the Sam F. Davis at his next start. And Grande just able to put that horse away, Mike, finishing up like one that shouldn't mind some extra distance.
Yeah, it seems like that. He stays on very well in here. I mean, that race is, I'm not going to say it's tough to evaluate. He ran well in there. Camp Hale seems like he has a chance to be okay also. And so maybe that's all you need to know about this horse. It's just those races are always my least favorite ones, David, where the 2 logical horses go to the front together and then nobody runs behind them. I know he's better than Camp Hale. That's kind of all I know about him at this point. He's going to be a really short price in here, but maybe this is just a really good spot for him.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the wagering value on him, and I found this DRF formulator fact for trainer Todd Pletcher. This is for horses that won their debut last time out, making not just their second start, but their second route attempt. So horses that won their debuts routing on the dirt, coming back in another dirt route. And Todd Pletcher's 4 for 16, 25%, sounds fine. But Mike, every winner in that sample was odds on, and this is just an entire sample that's comprised of short prices.
Yeah, either based on that formulator effect, either Grande is going to turn out to be really good or is not.
Number 6 is McKellen. He's the other horse that's cross-entered in the Fountain of Youth on Saturday. That feels like it would be a pretty ambitious spot for him based on what he did last time in the Mucho Macho Man, where, I don't know, Mike, I watched that replay. I just had a really tough time putting a positive spin on it.
Yeah, he just didn't do anything in there. Just felt like a horse who they stepped up into a stakes race and he was completely overmatched. Obviously, that's not the case here. And so maybe he'll just really appreciate stepping back. Maybe he'll really appreciate getting more distance to work with. And then if he can do that, David, I mean, it's not like he's impossible. His debut was fine. Runner up to Disco Time in his start prior to the Mucho Macho Man. There's nothing wrong with that performance. So this horse isn't impossible in my opinion.
The number 7, Indecisiveness, is going to be a big price in this race, and just another one that's going to have to get faster. He did win his debut going 6.5 furlongs, but only got a 62 buyer for that performance. It did appear he took a minor step forward on the stretch out last time, but he was no match for Super Time, so we already mentioned we're not exactly sure if he's good enough on the dirt.
Yeah, exactly. He just didn't do enough in that most recent start to make me feel like I could bet him back against this field, which might be at least as good as the field he was in last time.
And then rounding out the field is the number 8, Smoken Boy, a horse who attracted some nibbles on the board when he stepped way up in class to try the Sam F. Davis last time in his first start in the continental United States, previously having raced in Puerto Rico. And Mike, when you go back to watch some of those early races, he was visually impressive. I have no idea what he was beating. And the way that he ran at Tampa last time kind of makes me question if he wasn't beating very much early on.
Yeah, very, very fair. I had obviously the same reservations about him. I'm with you. Looking at those, especially the last 2 wins over there, he looked really good when they stretched him out. He was even better when they stretched him out, in my opinion, when he won that Group 1 race. But you don't know what he's beating over there, and maybe he's just in against a bunch of trash. He came over the Sam Davis. I don't know, Dave. Obviously, he didn't run. I don't think you want to defend that performance too much. It's not like he did no running in there, at least in my opinion, because they had to take him back to last from the outside post. It felt like Paco kind of wanted to make him move up the backstretch, and he did, and then he dropped back again. I don't know. It wasn't a perfect trip, but it wasn't a terrible one. I just feel like he's maybe the kind of horse, especially if he's anything like, I mean, this made him a total outsider basically on the morning line in here. And that's how they're going to bet the race. maybe he's a horse you can give one more chance to.
And I did notice Paco kind of gave up at the end of that race, and maybe he should have only lost by a dozen lengths. He ended up losing by 19 because Paco just eased him in the last furlong. So we'll see if that really makes a difference. You will note Smoken Boy is the only horse that is in for the $75,000 tag in this race. Let's throw up our picks for the Thursday race of the day, Mike. And I'm going to go down to the inside to the number one, Jimmy's Dailies. I can't say that I'm totally convinced that the mile and an eighth is going to be right for him, but I thought he beat a good field last time, and he's got the physical attributes that say to me, maybe he will get the distance in spite of his pedigree.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. My take on this race was, the 1 and the 5, they'll probably take most of the money in here. And I didn't feel like I had to be totally sold on them yet. So if I'm going to bet the race, I'm going to try to find somebody else. I decided to give Smoken Boy one more chance in here just to see if he classes up at all. The other horse for me was actually Brian Lynch's other horse, the 4 Solid Left.
The number 8, Smoken Boy for Mike, and the number 1, Jimmy's Dailies for me in the Thursday race of the day, race 8 at Gulfstream Park. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.